Life will always throw mountains in front of you. Some are financial struggles, some are health battles, some are broken relationships, and some are just that voice in your head telling you you're not good enough. Mountains are real, they're heavy, they block your vision, your progress, and your peace. But here's the truth: every mountain can move, not because life suddenly gets easier, but because faith changes how you face it. Faith isn't just some mystical concept or religious word. It's that unshakable belief deep down that says, this is possible even if it doesn't look like it. Faith is the fuel when your tank is empty, the spark when the fire is almost gone. It's the reason people with nothing still rise and people with everything still fall when they lose it. Think about it. A mountain doesn't move by you staring at it, complaining about it, or wishing it away. It moves when you step forward, when you act, when you push with everything you have, believing that somehow, some way, it will shift. Faith doesn't deny the mountain exists. Faith simply refuses to let it stay where it is. If you've got dreams, goals, or even just a hope to survive tomorrow, you need faith. Because faith will keep you steady when logic says you should quit. Faith will give you strength when you're already past your limit. Faith will make you say, I'm not done yet. When the world says you're finished, your mountain might be bigger than you, but it's not bigger than the force inside you. Faith taps into something beyond your circumstances. It connects you to purpose, to resilience, to a source of strength that doesn't run out. The mountain isn't the problem. The problem is forgetting that you already carry the power to move it. Mountains are real, but they are movable, and that is the heart of what faith reveals. Every person at some point in life stands before obstacles that look unshakable, immovable, and permanent. They come in different shapes and sizes. For one person, it might be poverty. For another, it could be sickness. And for someone else, it could be the pain of rejection or the burden of fear. These mountains stand tall, casting shadows over our hope and making us feel small. Yet the truth is that no matter how high, wide, or intimidating a mountain appears, it is not stronger than the force of faith. Faith has always been the power that makes what looks impossible become possible. It is what gives courage to step forward when everything in sight says to retreat. It is what tells you there is a way even when no path seems visible. Faith transforms the mountain from something that blocks you into something that moves because of you. When you first face a mountain, the natural instinct is to either complain about it or try to walk around it. But mountains aren't meant to be admired or feared. They are meant to be challenged. And that challenge doesn't come from brute force. It comes from belief. Faith doesn't start with the size of your strength. It starts with the size of your conviction. Conviction that says you are not stuck here forever. Conviction that says this is not how your story ends. Conviction that says there is more on the other side. That conviction begins to weaken the mountain's hold on your mind, and when your mind shifts, your actions follow. Suddenly, you are no longer standing still. You are climbing, pushing, speaking, and believing in ways you never imagined you could. People who lack faith see mountains as the end of the road, but those with faith see them as a test, as an opportunity, as a doorway to greater strength. What looks like a dead end is actually a place where your faith is being called to step into the spotlight. The mountain is not there to crush you, but to reveal what is inside you. It is not there to remind you of your weakness, but to awaken the resilience you carry. The mountain only appears unmovable because you have not yet discovered the measure of faith within you. Once you awaken that measure, the mountain loses its authority over your future. Every great story of breakthrough begins with someone standing before a mountain they did not think they could overcome. Yet they chose to believe it was possible. Faith is not about denying reality. It is about defying the limitations reality tries to impose on you. Faith is not the absence of the mountain. It is the presence of a deeper assurance that the mountain is not final. When you realize this, you stop treating obstacles as permanent fixtures and start treating them as temporary barriers waiting for your determination and belief to shift them out of the way. Faith is fuel, and without it life quickly drains your energy and spirit. Everyone has moments when the weight of challenges feels overwhelming, and the mind whispers that it is easier to quit than to keep going. At that point, human strength alone isn't enough to carry you forward. Muscles get tired, emotions grow weary, resources run dry, but faith provides a different kind of strength, one that does not come from what you can see or touch, but from what you believe deep within. Faith is the invisible fire that keeps you taking the next step when you feel like collapsing. It is the push that comes from a place beyond logic, beyond circumstances, and beyond the doubts that scream at you to stop. Without this inner fuel, people surrender long before their breakthrough arrives. With it, they endure storms, overcome setbacks, and rise again even when everything around them says it is finished. Faith works like oxygen to the spirit. Just as the body cannot live without air, the soul cannot live without belief in something greater than the struggle in front of it. When you breathe faith, your mind opens up, your vision expands, and your courage multiplies. It turns despair into hope, weakness into determination, and fear into boldness. Where others see a wall too high to climb, faith allows you to see the possibility of a door that might open. Where others give up because the journey looks too long, faith tells you that one more step is worth taking. That is why some people who have less materially can still achieve more than those with plenty, because they carry faith as their fuel. It is not about ignoring problems or pretending difficulties do not exist. Faith is honest about the mountain, the pain, the shortage, or the loss, but faith does not stop there. It acknowledges reality while still holding on to possibility. It lets you face the truth of where you are without letting that truth define where you will remain. That is what separates people who break through from those who stay stuck. One person sees the mountain and stops. The other sees the same mountain, but draws strength from an inner fire that says this is not the end. That fire is faith. When you cultivate faith, you begin to understand that every step forward is fueled not by perfect conditions, but by determination rooted in belief. Faith keeps you running when others stand still. It keeps you climbing when others turn back. And it keeps you fighting when others have surrendered. The fuel of faith doesn't run out because it is not tied to what you have in your hand, but to what you hold in your heart. As long as that belief is alive inside you, you are never truly empty, never without strength, and never without the power to keep going. Faith requires action, because believing without moving is like having a car full of fuel and never turning the key. Too many people wait for life to change, wait for the mountain to shift on its own, or wait for the perfect moment before they take a step. But faith is not passive. It is not about sitting back and hoping things will somehow fix themselves. Faith is alive, and living faith always demands movement. The moment you decide to act in alignment with what you believe, you set forces in motion that begin to reshape your reality. Action is the language faith speaks, and without it, faith becomes little more than a wish or a dream left hanging in the air. When you believe something is possible, the natural response is to move toward it. If you believe healing is possible, you act like recovery is within reach. If you believe success is possible, you prepare, you plan, you put in the work, even if the outcome is not visible yet. If you believe restoration is possible, you take steps to mend what is broken. Faith is not waiting for proof before you move. Faith is moving as if the proof is already on the way. That is why mountains only begin to shift when you approach them, when you dare to put one foot in front of the other despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, despite the whispers that tell you to turn back. It is easy to talk about faith and harder to live it out, because action means risk. Action means stepping into the unknown without a guarantee. It means leaving comfort for the chance of growth. It means facing the possibility of failure with the conviction that even if you fall, you will rise again. But this is where the beauty of faith shines brightest, because faith is not afraid of failure. Faith sees failure as part of the process, not the end of it. Every action you take in faith builds strength, sharpens vision, and moves you closer to the result you cannot yet see. The people who have moved the mountains in their lives are not the ones who sat and waited, but the ones who stepped forward with courage even when the path looked impossible. They understood that the mountain doesn't move for those who stare at it. It moves for those who climb, those who push, those who dig, those who speak to it with the authority of belief. And while the first step may feel small, it carries enormous power, because it shifts you from waiting to creating, from hoping to doing, from thinking to becoming. Faith without action is like planting a seed and never watering it.
The potential is there, but without action it never grows, never produces, never transforms. But when action and faith work together, they create momentum, and momentum is what pushes the mountain back, breaks the barriers down, and opens the way forward.
Faith redefines limits because it does not accept boundaries as final or restrictions as permanent. Life teaches us from the beginning that there are things we cannot do, places we cannot go, and dreams we cannot achieve, and over time those lessons carve invisible lines in our minds. These limits become cages, and many people spend their lives trapped within them, never realizing that the walls are only as strong as the belief that holds them. Faith breaks through that prison, because it dares to believe that limits are not fixed but flexible, not unchangeable but movable. Faith whispers that where people say it is impossible, there is still a way waiting to be discovered. The mind plays a huge role in shaping what we think we are capable of. Fear, failure, and repeated disappointment condition us to lower our expectations, to shrink our vision, and to stay safe within boundaries that feel comfortable. But faith refuses to stay confined. It stretches the imagination, it broadens the perspective, and it makes room for possibilities that logic says cannot exist. The reason faith redefines limits is that it draws its power from something greater than logic. Logic measures based on the seen, the known, and the proven. Faith measures based on what can be, even if it has never been seen before. That is why people who live by faith accomplish things that surprise the world. They are not bound by the visible limits, they are driven by the unseen assurance that more is possible. When someone carries faith, they begin to see obstacles differently. A locked door is no longer the end. It is simply a challenge to find another way in. A failure is no longer defeat. It is training for greater endurance. A closed opportunity is not final rejection. It is redirection towards something better. In this way, faith doesn't just move mountains, it moves the boundaries of how we think about life itself. It reshapes what we believe is within our reach and what we believe we can endure. Limits stop being barriers and start becoming stepping stones. History is filled with examples of individuals who looked at what others called limits and dared to challenge them. Every breakthrough, every invention, every revolution of thought or discovery came from someone who refused to accept the line that was drawn in front of them. The same principle applies in personal life. When you choose faith over fear, you redefine what you are capable of.
You discover strength you didn't know you had, courage you thought was out of reach, and resilience that carries you through storms that should have broken you. Faith does not mean limits disappear, but it means they no longer dictate the outcome.
They may exist, but they do not hold ultimate authority. Faith places the final word not in the obstacle, not in the weakness, not in the boundary, but in the conviction that nothing is too great to overcome when belief leads the way. The mountain isn't bigger than you, even if it feels that way in the moment. Mountains are designed to intimidate, to make you doubt, to make you shrink back and question your worth. They look overwhelming because they tower over your perspective, casting shadows that distort the truth. The problem is not the mountain itself, but the way it convinces you that you are powerless against it. Faith reverses that narrative. Faith reminds you that while the mountain may be large, what lives inside of you is far greater. Strength is not measured by what stands in front of you, but by what rises up within you. When you realize that, the fear of the mountain loses its grip and the power within you starts to take its rightful place. So often people compare themselves to their problems and come up short. They say, this sickness is too advanced, this debt is too heavy, this pain is too deep, this dream is too far. But those comparisons are misleading because they measure human capacity against human challenge. Faith shifts the equation. It connects you to a source of strength, courage, and endurance that is not limited by your own resources. With faith, you are no longer fighting in your own size. You are fighting with a force that exceeds every boundary of your natural ability. That is why mountains that look immovable suddenly begin to move when faith is active, because faith refuses to let the obstacle define the outcome. Every mountain carries a voice. It tells you to quit. It tells you to stay small. It tells you to go back to where you came from. That voice is loud, but faith speaks louder. Faith says keep going. Faith says you are stronger than you know. Faith says this mountain is temporary. When you choose to listen to that voice, the mountain no longer dictates your path. Instead, you step into a strength that grows with every move forward. What once looked impossible becomes possible, not because the mountain got smaller, but because you recognize the greatness within you. The truth is that mountains are part of every life. No one escapes them, no one avoids them forever, and no one can pretend they don't exist. But the difference between those who remain stuck and those who rise above lies in the understanding of who is bigger. If you see the mountain as greater, you will always retreat. If you see the force within you as greater, you will always advance. Faith trains your eyes to see correctly. It doesn't deny the size of the mountain, but it puts the size of the mountain in perspective compared to the size of the power inside you. That shift in perspective changes everything, because once you know the mountain is not bigger than you, its ability to control your life ends, and your ability to move it begins.